The warning signs, the Galactic Trade Summit Station hung in the void between star systems. A massive structure of gleaming metal and crystal where hundreds of species gathered to conduct business. Dr. Sarah Mitchell walked through the main corridor with steady steps, her diplomatic credentials glowing softly on her collar. She had been Earth's lead negotiator for 3 years now, long enough to understand the complex web of galactic politics, but not long enough to grow comfortable with it. The summit was supposed to be routine. Humans had been part of the galactic community for 40 years, slowly building relationships and establishing trade routes. Earth controlled 15 colony worlds, modest by galactic standards, but they were growing. The colonies provided resources, scientific research stations, and new homes for humanity's expanding population. Everything had been proceeding smoothly until 6 months ago, when the Vexere Consortium began making problems. The Vexere were an old species, one of the founding members of the Galactic Trade Authority. They controlled over 300 systems and had economic influence that stretched across half the known galaxy. Their representatives were tall beings with smooth purple skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on their elongated heads. They communicated through a combination of vocal sounds and color shifts in their skin, which made negotiations challenging, even with translation. Technology.Sarah entered the main conference chamber, where the current session was already underway. The room could accommodate representatives from 200 species, with seating arrangements designed for every imaginable body type. Some species sat in traditional chairs, others floated in containment fields, and a few required liquid environments. The human delegation had a small section near the back. Just 4 seats for the 4 representatives Earth could afford to send. She took her place next to James Park, her second in command, who leaned over and whispered quietly. The Vexere are blocking the medical supply shipment to Harmony Station again. 3rd time this month. They claim paperwork issues, but we both know that's fiction. Sarah nodded slightly, keeping her expression neutral. Harmony Station was a research facility on the edge of human space, home to 2,000 scientists and their families. The station specialized in xenobiology and had made several important discoveries about alien diseases. Without regular medical supplies, the station would have to shut down within weeks. The session moderator, a being called Vesic from the ancient Korath species, signaled for the next speaker. Ambassador Zivrin of the Vexere Consortium rose from his platform. He was massive, even by Vexere standards, nearly 3 meters tall, and his skin shifted through shades of purple and blue as he spoke. The Vexere Consortium wishes to address concerns about human research activities in Sector 7, Zevran announced. His voice was smooth and controlled, translated instantly by the summit systems. We have evidence that human scientists are conducting dangerous experiments with biological materials. Such activities pose risks to neighboring systems and violate several safety protocols. Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but kept her face calm. This was a complete fabrication. Harmony Station's research was thoroughly documented and regularly inspected by galactic safety authorities. The Vexere were creating problems where none existed. She stood smoothly and activated her speaking rights. The Vexere allegations are unfounded. Harmony Station has passed every safety inspection for the past 3 years. We have complete documentation available for review. If the consortium has specific concerns, we welcome an independent investigation. Zevran's skin shifted to a darker purple, which Sarah had learned indicated dismissiveness or contempt. Human documentation is often incomplete. We recommend the station be shut down until proper oversight can be established. This may take several years to organize properly. Several other species made sounds of agreement. The Vexere had many allies, species who depended on their economic networks or feared their influence. Sarah looked around the chamber and saw few sympathetic faces. Humans were still relatively new to galactic politics. still learning the games that older species had played for thousands of years. We request that this matter be reviewed by the Trade Authority Safety Commission within 30 days, Sarah said firmly. Harmony Station will cooperate fully with any legitimate inspection. However, we also request that medical supply shipments resume immediately. Blocking essential supplies puts lives at risk. Request noted, Vesic chimed in his crystalline voice. The Safety Commission will review the matter according to standard procedures. Timeline for review is typically 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months. By then, Harmony Station would be forced to evacuate. Years of research would be lost, and the scientists would be scattered. Sarah sat down, making careful notes on her data tablet. This was the 12th complaint the Vexery had filed against human operations in the past 6 months. None had been resolved. All seemed designed to create maximum disruption with minimum justification. After the session ended, Sarah walked through the station's observation gardens, areas designed to simulate different planetary environments. She needed to think, to clear her head and consider options. The gardens were peaceful, with sections showing everything from methane swamps to crystalline forests. She found a section that looked like Earth, with green grass and artificial sunlight, and sat on a bench. She was not alone for long. An elderly figure approached slowly, moving with the careful steps of someone who had seen many years. It was Ketherick, a Korath elder who had served on various galactic councils for over 2 centuries. The Korath resembled tall, slender birds with 4 arms and wise, golden eyes. Ketherick's feathers had faded to silver with age. "Dr. Mitchell," Ketherick said softly, settling onto the bench beside her. "May I share a moment of your time?" Of course, Elder Ketherick, Sarah replied respectfully. The Korath were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and their elders were treated with reverence by almost everyone. Ketherick was quiet for a moment, his feathers rustling slightly. "I have observed the Vexery's actions toward humanity with growing concern. They are pushing very hard, harder than is wise." Sarah looked at him carefully. "You think their complaints are coordinated harassment?" "I know they are," Ketherick said simply. "The Vexery see humans as competitors. Your species learns quickly, adapts rapidly, and your colonies are becoming economically successful. The Vexery wish to slow your growth, to keep you contained and manageable. Why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked. Ketherick's golden eyes met hers. "Because I am old enough to remember things that others have forgotten. I remember when humanity first made contact with galactic civilization. The official records say it was 40 years ago that a Zentari exploration ship discovered Earth and welcomed you peacefully into our community." "That's correct," Sarah said slowly. "That's our history. That is the official story." "Yes," Ketherick agreed. "But I was there when certain decisions were made, decisions about how to present humanity to the galaxy. I know what happened before the official first contact." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. "What do you mean, before?" Ketherick looked around carefully, ensuring they were alone. "There is a species that no longer exists, Dr. Mitchell. They were called the Morphians. They were erased from most public records about 250 years ago. Does your government's historical database mention them?" "No," Sarah admitted. "I've never heard that name." Few have," Ketherick said quietly. "The Morphians were a powerful empire, controlling nearly 200 systems. They were expansionists, always seeking new territory and resources. They found Earth when your people had just developed primitive fusion drives and were beginning to explore your own solar system." Sarah leaned forward, her heart beating faster. "What happened?" "The Morphians saw an opportunity," Ketherick continued. "A primitive species with a beautiful planet full of resources. They sent a subjugation fleet. They demanded Earth's surrender, and when your governments refused, they bombarded 3 of your major cities from orbit. 15 million humans died in the first attack. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. 15 million. She tried to imagine such devastation and felt sick. Earth's military forces fought back with everything they had, Ketherick said. Nuclear missiles, kinetic weapons, even ramming attacks with spacecraft that were never designed for combat. Humans destroyed several Morphean ships, which surprised them. They had expected easy conquest. So they pulled back and sent a message. Surrender or we destroy 5 more cities every week. And Sarah whispered. Earth went silent, Ketherick said. For 4 months, there was no communication from your planet. The Morpheans assumed you were preparing to surrender. They waited, confident in their superiority. They were very, very wrong. Ketherick's feathers ruffled, a sign of discomfort. Humans spent those 4 months doing something the Morpheans never anticipated. Your entire species united. Every nation, every government, every scientific institution focused on a single goal. You studied the Morphean technology from the wreckage of their ships. You built new weapons. You designed strategies. And most importantly, you made a decision. Earth's united government declared that negotiation was impossible with a species that murdered millions as a negotiating tactic. Therefore, the only acceptable outcome was complete elimination of the Morphean threat. Sarah stared at the elder. Complete elimination? The war lasted 80 months, Ketherick said quietly. When it ended, the Morphean Empire no longer existed. Their home world was rendered uninhabitable. Their colonies were destroyed or abandoned. Out of 3 billion Morpheans, fewer than 20,000 survived as scattered refugees. The species was functionally extinct. How? Sarah asked. How could Earth, with primitive technology, destroy an interstellar empire? Because humans fight differently than any other species in the galaxy, Ketherick explained. Most species fight wars over territory or resources. They seek advantage and victory. Humans fight wars to eliminate threats. When you determine that something is dangerous to your survival, you don't try to defeat it. You try to erase it completely. The Morpheans learned this too late. Ketherick stood slowly. The Galactic Authority arrived after the war ended. They found Earth damaged, but recovering. They found humans rebuilding. And they were terrified. They held emergency sessions debating what to do about your species. Some argued for quarantine. Others suggested preemptive action. But wiser voices prevailed. What did they decide? Sarah asked. They made an agreement with Earth's government. They would welcome humanity into the galactic community. They would help Earth rebuild and expand. But certain conditions would apply. First, the war with the Morpheans would be erased from public records. Humanity would be presented as newly discovered, peaceful, and eager to cooperate. Second, special protocols would be established to ensure humans were never provoked in ways that might activate your elimination response. Third, only the oldest and most trusted species would know the truth. Sarah felt her world shifting. Everything she thought she knew about Earth's history was a carefully constructed fiction. The protocols have worked for 250 years, Ketherick continued. Humans have been model members of our community. Peaceful, helpful, innovative. But those protocols exist for a reason. They exist because the old species remember what humans become when their survival is threatened. When their civilians are targeted. When someone pushes them too far. And the Vexery? Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. The Vexery are arrogant, Ketherick said sadly. They are powerful now, but they are not old. They do not know the histories that were erased. They do not understand the protocols or why they exist. They see humans as weak because you negotiate instead of fighting. They are making a terrible mistake. The elder began walking away, then paused. There is a phrase in your language, Dr. Mitchell. Something humans say when patience runs out. I heard it once, 250 years ago, right before the Morphean home world fell. A human commander said it to the Morphean fleet. Do you know what phrase I mean? Sarah felt something cold and certain settle in her chest. Now you've really pushed it. Yes, Ketherick said softly. When a human says those words, it means something fundamental has changed. It means the time for negotiation is over. The Morpheans heard those words. The galaxy has forgotten them, but some of us remember. Some of us made sure the protocols existed, so no one would ever need to hear those words again. He looked at her with ancient, sad eyes. Be careful, Dr. Mitchell. The Vexery are pushing very hard. If they push too far, if they cross certain lines, they will learn what the Morpheans learned. And the galaxy will remember why those protocols exist. Ketherick left her alone in the garden. Sarah sat for a long time, thinking about hidden histories and buried truths. She thought about protocols designed to protect the galaxy from humanity. She thought about the Vexery and their arrogant certainty that humans were weak. That night, Sarah accessed Earth's classified military archives. She used codes that only senior diplomatic staff possessed, codes that opened files most people never knew existed. She found records marked Morphean Conflict, Historical Context, Maximum Security. She read through the night. She saw footage of the war, strategies that violated every rule of civilized warfare. She saw weapons designed for one purpose only: complete destruction of an enemy species. She saw the systematic dismantling of an empire. She saw efficiency that was terrifying in its thoroughness. Asterisk. The final file was a report written by Earth's War Council after the Morphean home world fell. One paragraph stood out. Humanity possesses two operational modes. In standard mode, we are diplomatic, creative, and cooperative. In elimination mode, we are the most dangerous species known to exist. We do not fight to win territory. We fight to remove threats permanently. The Morphean Empire forced us into elimination mode. They paid the ultimate price. We must ensure this never happens again. Sarah closed the files as dawn broke over the artificial horizon of the station. She understood now. She understood the patient negotiations, the careful diplomacy, the willingness to absorb insults and provocations. Earth's government was trying desperately to stay in standard mode. They were following the ancient agreement, being the peaceful species the galaxy expected. But protocols only worked if everyone followed them. And the Vexery were not following them. They were pushing, testing, provoking. They thought they were dealing with a weak species that could be bullied and contained. They were wrong. Terribly, fatally wrong. 3 days later, everything changed. The Vexery attacked Harmony Station directly. Not with legal harassment or trade barriers, but with actual military force. 3 Vexery destroyers appeared without warning and opened fire on the research facility. The attack was sudden and brutal. Harmony Station's minimal defenses lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, 83 people were dead. Doctors, scientists, engineers, and their families. 17 of the dead were children who lived on the station while their parents worked. The Vexery ships broadcast a message before jumping away. Humanity must learn its place in our galaxy. This is what happens to those who refuse to understand. Sarah received the news in her quarters. She watched the damage reports, the casualty lists, the footage of destroyed sections of the station. She saw the bodies floating in the wreckage. She saw the children. Something inside her went very quiet and very cold. She called an emergency council session. Every delegate attended, sensing that something fundamental had shifted. The chamber was packed when Sarah walked to the human section. She did not sit down. She stood at the speaker's position and activated the main display. The images from Harmony Station filled the screens. Burning corridors, destroyed laboratories, bodies. The chamber went silent as the delegates watched. When the footage ended, Sarah spoke. Her voice was calm and clear, but there was something in her tone that made several of the older species shift uncomfortably. The Vexery Consortium has attacked a civilian research facility, Sarah said. They murdered 83 people, including 17 children. They broadcast a message claiming this was a lesson for humanity. They were correct. This was indeed a lesson. Ambassador Zevran stood up, his skin shifting to an aggressive red color. The facility was conducting dangerous research. We took necessary action to protect neighboring systems. You murdered children, Sarah said quietly. The chamber was absolutely silent now. You attacked civilians without warning. You bragged about it. And now you stand here expecting us to accept your justification. What will you do? Zevran demanded. Humanity has 15 colonies and a small defense fleet. The Vexery Consortium controls 300 systems and one of the largest military forces in the galaxy. If you want conflict, we will crush you like insects. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried through the entire chamber with perfect clarity. Ambassador Zevran, I want to make something very clear. Humanity prefers peace. We believe in negotiation. We have followed every protocol and procedure of this council. We have been patient with your harassment. We have absorbed your insults. We have tried very hard to remain friends. Asterisk, she paused, and several of the oldest species in the chamber began quietly standing and moving toward the exits. But you have now crossed a line that should never be crossed. You murdered our children. You attacked our civilians. You promised to do it again. Sarah's eyes were flat and cold. So I need to tell you something very important, Ambassador Zevran. Something you should understand clearly. The oldest delegates were leaving now, moving quickly but without panic. Ketherick caught Sarah's eye as he passed and gave a small, sad nod. Ambassador Zevran, Sarah said softly, you've really pushed it now. The chamber erupted in chaos. Younger species shouted questions. Security personnel moved to restore order. But the older species were already gone, already sending urgent messages to their home worlds. They knew what those words meant. They remembered. Sarah walked out of the chamber calmly. Behind her, Zevran stood confused, unsure why his victory felt suddenly like defeat. He did not understand the significance of the phrase. He did not know the history that had been erased. He would learn soon enough. They all would die because humanity had just shifted operational modes. And the Vexery Consortium had approximately 72 hours left before they discovered what that really meant. Asterisk, the Reckoning the Vexery Consortium celebrated their attack on Harmony Station. Ambassador Zevran held a press conference in the summit's media center, where reporters from across the galaxy gathered to hear his statement. He stood before the cameras with his skin shifting through confident shades of blue and purple, radiating satisfaction. The Vexery Consortium has demonstrated that we will not tolerate dangerous activities near our territories, Zevran announced to the assembled media. Humanity has been warned repeatedly about their reckless research. They ignored our concerns. The consequences were their own responsibility. A young Thrain reporter, her scales shimmering nervously, raised a question. Ambassador, you attacked a civilian facility. 83 people died, including children. How do you justify targeting non-combatants? Zevran waved a dismissive hand. Regrettable casualties in a necessary security operation. If humans cannot protect their civilians, perhaps they should reconsider their expansion into space. The press conference continued for another hour. Zevran answered questions with complete confidence, explaining how the Vexery Consortium would continue monitoring human activities closely. He suggested that humanity should accept Vexery oversight of all their research facilities. He implied that more attacks might be necessary if humans refused to cooperate. Zevran did not notice was the absence of certain reporters. The Korath delegation's media representatives had left quietly 30 minutes into the conference. So had the Sorvathi correspondents and several others from ancient species. They were not interested in Zevran's statements. They were busy evacuating their people from Vexuri space. Across the galaxy, the oldest civilizations began moving with quiet urgency. Korath trading vessels departed from Vexuri stations ahead of schedule. Sorvathi research outposts near Vexuri borders shut down and evacuated their personnel. Thalian mining operations in systems adjacent to Vexuri territory suddenly closed for unspecified maintenance issues. Younger species noticed, but did not understand. They sent inquiries to the older civilizations, asking about the sudden relocations. The responses were vague. Equipment failures, scheduled rotations, routine precautions. Nothing to worry about, but the ancient species knew better. They had seen this before, 250 years ago. They recognized the signs. A human had said those specific words. Now you've really pushed it. Those 5 words had meaning, terrible meaning that most of the galaxy had forgotten. On Earth, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a facility that officially did not exist came to life. The Nightfall Command Center had been dormant for over 2 centuries, maintained but unused, waiting for a situation that Earth's government hoped would never come. The facility was carved into the ocean floor, hidden beneath layers of rock and shielded by technology that made it invisible to any known scanning method. Admiral Marcus Chun stood in the command center, watching as dormant systems activated one by one. He was 70 years old, a career military officer who had spent most of his life hoping he would never need to enter this room. Around him, specialized personnel moved with practiced efficiency, taking positions at stations they had trained for but never actually used. Confirmation received from Ambassador Mitchell, reported Captain Lisa Torres, Chun's second-in-command. She transmitted the activation phrase. All diplomatic protocols have been exhausted. The Vexuri have attacked civilian targets and threatened further action. Chun nodded slowly. How many casualties at Harmony Station? 83 confirmed dead, including 17 children, Torres replied, her voice tight. The Vexuri are claiming it was a justified security operation. Chun closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were hard and cold. Execute Protocol Nightfall. Activate all dormant units. Send recall orders to every deep space asset. We are switching to elimination mode. Throughout human space, things that had been sleeping began to wake. Cargo vessels that had been peacefully hauling supplies suddenly activated military-grade engines and weapon systems. Mining stations and asteroid belts revealed concealed defense platforms. Research facilities that studied xenobiology or atmospheric sciences opened. Hidden hangars and launched attack squadrons. The human defense fleet, which officially numbered 37 ships, suddenly became 370 ships. Every colony had been building, preparing, following protocols established after the Morphean War. Build in secret. Maintain readiness. Hope it never becomes necessary. But be ready if it does. Admiral Chun access the sealed archives. The complete records of the Morphean War. He studied the strategies, the tactics, the systematic approach that had eliminated an entire empire in 18 months. He looked at casualty projections, both for humanity and for the Vexuri. The numbers were horrifying. Admiral, Torres said quietly, we could still negotiate. Send a warning. Give them a chance to back down. Chun looked at her. We gave them every chance, Captain. We negotiated for 6 months. We filed complaints. We followed their procedures. They responded by murdering our children and promising to do it again. There are no more chances. He turned to the command center. All units, this is Admiral Chun. You know what we are about to do. You know why it's necessary. The Vexery Consortium has activated our elimination response. They attacked our civilians. They killed our children. Under Protocol Nightfall, our objective is not victory. Our objective is removal of the threat. Complete and permanent removal. He paused, letting the words sink in. Execute Operation Nightfall. All units proceed to assigned positions. Rules of engagement are elimination protocol. No prisoners. No negotiations. No mercy. The Vexery Consortium ends today. Throughout human space, fleets began moving. They did not head toward Vexery territory in obvious formations. Instead, they scattered, jumping to hundreds of different locations simultaneously. They had been planning this for centuries, updating strategies and positions, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. The first strikes came 72 hours after Sarah Mitchell spoke those 5 words. The Vexery never saw them coming. Human ships emerged from faster than light, traveled at the edges of Vexery space, and immediately launched specialized weapons at communication relay stations. The weapons were not explosive. They were nanite swarms, microscopic machines programmed to dismantle specific technologies. Within 6 hours, the Vexery Consortium's galaxy-wide communication network went dark. Stations could not talk to each other. Military commands could not coordinate. Trade vessels lost contact with their destinations. The 300-system empire suddenly became 300 isolated systems, with no way to organize a unified response. The Vexery High Command, based on their home world of Vexer Prime, tried desperately to understand what was happening. They sent ships to investigate the silent communication stations. Those ships never returned. Human vessels waited in ambush, destroying Vexery ships before they could report what they found. Admiral Zevran, still at the Galactic Trade Summit Station, demanded an emergency council session. He stood before the assembled delegates, with his skin flashing angry reds and oranges. Humanity has launched unprovoked attacks on Vexery infrastructure, Zevran shouted. They are using illegal weapons. They refuse to respond to our communications. We demand immediate council intervention. Sarah Mitchell sat calmly in the human section. She did not stand. She did not argue. She simply watched Zevran with flat, emotionless eyes. Besic, the council moderator, chimed with distress. Ambassador Mitchell, the council requests an explanation for human military action. These attacks violate numerous treaties and warfare conventions. Sarah stood slowly. The Vexery Consortium murdered 83 human civilians, including 17 children. We requested council intervention. The council initiated standard review procedures that would take months or years. During that time, the Vexery promised to attack more human facilities. Therefore, humanity is resolving this matter under Earth law. Asterisk, what does Earth law say? Asked a Zentari delegate nervously. When a threat attacks our civilians and promises to continue attacking, there is only one acceptable response, Sarah said calmly. Complete removal of that threat. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions and protests. Several species demanded that humanity cease military operations immediately. Others pointed out that the Vexery had started the conflict by attacking Harmony Station. Asterisk. Zevran's skin flashed through violent colors. You cannot remove the Vexery Consortium. We control 300 systems. We have the largest economy in this sector. You are 15 colonies with a tiny fleet. Sarah smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. Ambassador Zevran, how many of your 300 systems can you currently contact? The question made Zevran pause. Temporary communication issues. We are resolving them. You are not resolving anything, Sarah said quietly. Your entire communication network is gone. Your systems are isolated. Your fleets cannot coordinate, and you still do not understand what is happening." She walked toward him slowly. Several security personnel moved to intervene, but she was not threatening him physically. She just wanted him to see her face clearly. For 250 years, humanity has followed the protocols. We have been peaceful. We have been patient. We have absorbed insults and provocations. Do you know why, Ambassador? Zevran said nothing, but his skin had shifted to uncertain purple. Because the old species made an agreement with us. After the last time, someone pushed us too far. They asked us to be peaceful, and we agreed. They created protocols to ensure we were never provoked beyond certain limits. Those protocols existed to protect you, Ambassador. To protect everyone. Sarah's voice dropped lower. But you ignored the protocols. You attacked our civilians. You killed our children. You activated the part of humanity that we have been trying very hard to keep dormant. And now you face the consequences. She turned to address the entire chamber. Humanity hereby notifies the Galactic Council that we are executing elimination protocol against the Vexery Consortium. We estimate the operation will be complete within 30 days. We recommend that all neutral species evacuate Vexery space immediately. We will not be responsible for collateral casualties. She walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the council erupted in confusion and fear. Zevran stood frozen, finally beginning to understand that something was terribly wrong. The second phase of Operation Nightfall began on day 5. Human fleets struck at Vexery economic infrastructure. Refineries that processed raw materials exploded. Trade hubs that connected multiple systems were destroyed. Banking centers that managed the consortium's vast wealth went dark. The Vexery tried to respond, but without communications, their defense was chaotic. Individual systems fought independently, unable to call for reinforcements or coordinate strategies. Human forces used tactics perfected during the Morphean War. Strike hard. Destroy the target completely. Disappear before enemy reinforcements arrive. Never fight fair. Never give them time to organize. On day 7, the Vexery High Command managed to assemble a response fleet at their home system. They gathered every available warship, nearly 400 vessels. It was the largest military formation the consortium could create under the circumstances. They intended to drive toward human space and force Earth to negotiate. Admiral Chun watched the Vexery fleet formation from his command center. Satellite reconnaissance showed the massive gathering of ships around. Vexer Prime. His tactical officers presented options for engaging or avoiding the fleet. "We are not avoiding them," Chun said quietly, "and we are not engaging them in traditional combat. Deploy the Cascade system." The Cascade system was humanity's ultimate weapon, developed during the Morphean War, but never used afterward. It was based on principles that violated every galactic warfare convention. It was efficient, devastating, and morally questionable. It was also perfect for elimination protocol. Human ships took positions in a sphere around the Vexery fleet, far enough away to avoid detection. They did not carry traditional weapons. Instead, they carried specialized gravity generators. On Chun's command, all units activated simultaneously. The effect was catastrophic. The gravity generators created localized distortions in spacetime, pulling everything in specific directions. The 400 Vexery ships were suddenly subjected to gravitational forces, pulling them toward each other from multiple angles. Ships collided, unable to maneuver against the impossible physics. Hulls crumpled. Reactors breached. In 17 minutes, the entire Vexery fleet was reduced to a debris field. No human ship fired a single conventional weapon. The Vexery destroyed themselves through forced collision, making it impossible to trace the attack back to any specific human action. From the outside, it looked like a catastrophic malfunction of Vexery technology. News of the fleet's destruction spread quickly through what remained of Vexery communication systems. The psychological impact was immense. The consortium's strongest defense had been eliminated in minutes, destroyed by forces they could not understand or fight. On day 10, human forces began targeting Vexery colony worlds. Not the civilian populations directly, but the infrastructure that made modern civilization possible. Power generation facilities, water purification systems, atmospheric processors, food distribution networks. Within days, colony worlds that had been prosperous became desperate survival situations. The Vexery government sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, begging for intervention. But those messages had to be carried by physical courier ships, since the communication network was gone. By the time the messages reached the Council, the situations they described had already worsened significantly. Elder Ketherick watched the crisis unfold from his quarters on the summit station. He had seen this before, during the Morphean War. The same systematic dismantling of an empire. The same cold efficiency. The same terrible certainty. A young Korath assistant came to his quarters with reports. Elder, the Vexery are requesting that we mediate with humanity. They are offering complete reparations, territorial concessions, anything Earth demands. Should we attempt to negotiate? Ketherick's feathers rustled sadly. It is too late for negotiation. Humanity has entered elimination mode. They will not stop until the threat is completely removed. But the Vexery are trying to surrender, the assistant protested. Surely humans can show mercy. You do not understand, Ketherick said gently. Mercy requires trust. The Vexery destroyed that trust when they murdered human children. Elimination protocol is not about punishment or revenge. It is about removing a threat permanently. Humans have calculated that the only way to ensure the Vexery never attack their civilians again is to ensure the Vexery no longer have the capacity to attack anyone. The assistant looked horrified. That is genocide. Yes, Ketherick agreed quietly. It is, and that is why the protocols existed. To prevent situations where humans felt this response was necessary. The Vexery ignored those protocols. Now they learn why the protocols existed in the first place. On day 15, human forces reached the core viscerae systems. These were the oldest colonies, the most heavily defended, the heart of the consortium. The Vexery had concentrated their remaining military assets to protect these worlds. They were prepared for a massive battle. Admiral Chun had no intention of giving them that battle. Instead, human ships deployed biological agents, viruses designed specifically to target Vexery physiology. The viruses were not lethal. They caused severe illness, fever, disorientation, but they rarely killed. What they did do was incapacitate 95% of the population for 3 to 4 weeks. Military forces could not fight while sick. Governments could not function. Defense systems went unmanned. The Vexery core systems collapsed into chaos without a single shot being fired. On day 20, Earth transmitted a message to Vexer Prime, the Vexery home world. It was the first direct communication from humanity since the operation began. Admiral Chun delivered the message personally, his face visible on every remaining screen in Vexery space. The Vexery consortium attacked human civilians and murdered our children. You were warned repeatedly that such actions would have consequences. You ignored those warnings. You laughed at our patience. You mistook our preference for peace as inability to do anything else. Chun's face was emotionless, cold. You were wrong. Humanity is fully capable of violence. We simply choose not to use it, except when absolutely necessary. You made it necessary. He paused, letting the words sink in. The Vexery consortium no longer exists as a functional government. Your communication network is destroyed. Your economy has collapsed. Your military is incapacitated or destroyed. Your colony worlds cannot sustain their populations without the infrastructure we have dismantled. Effective immediately, all former Vexery systems are under Earth administration. We will provide humanitarian aid to civilian populations. We will rebuild the infrastructure necessary for survival. But the Vexery Consortium as a political and military entity is finished. Chun leaned forward slightly. Let this be a lesson to the galaxy. Humanity prefers peace. We will negotiate, compromise, and cooperate whenever possible. But if you attack our civilians, if you kill our children, if you push us beyond the limits of patience, you will discover what we are truly capable of. You will learn why the old species created protocols to protect you from us. The message ended. Throughout Vexery space, stunned populations watched and understood that their empire had fallen in 20 days. An empire that had taken thousands of years to build had been dismantled in less than a month. On the Galactic Trade Summit Station, Sarah Mitchell held one final press conference. Reporters from every species attended, desperate for answers, trying to understand what had happened. Ambassador Mitchell, a Thrain reporter asked, her voice shaking, the Vexery Consortium is effectively destroyed. Was this really necessary? Could humanity not have shown restraint? Sarah looked at the reporter calmly. The Vexery murdered 17 human children at Harmony Station. They promised to murder more. Restraint was shown during 6 months of negotiations. Restraint was shown through diplomatic complaints and council procedures. Restraint ended when they attacked our civilians. Another reporter, a Zentari, asked nervously, "What happens now? Will humanity continue expanding? Will you attack other species?" "Humanity has no interest in conquest," Sarah replied. "We want what we have always wanted: peaceful coexistence, mutual trade, and cooperation." What happened to the Vexery was not aggression. It was elimination of a specific threat that attacked our people. A Korath elder reporter, one of the few who understood the historical context, asked a different question. "Ambassador, will humanity rejoin the Galactic Council?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. "That depends. The Council failed to act when we needed justice. The protocols that were supposed to protect everyone failed because they were not enforced. If we rejoin, it will be with certain conditions. The protocols must be strengthened. The Council must respond quickly to attacks on civilians. And every species must understand clearly what happens if they cross certain lines." She stood up, preparing to leave. Humanity spent 250 years trying to be the peaceful species the galaxy needed us to be. We succeeded for a long time. But the Vexery proved that some species do not respect peace. They only respect consequences. So we provided consequences, complete and absolute. Sarah walked out of the press conference. Behind her, the galaxy began processing what it had witnessed. An empire destroyed in 20 days. A reminder that humanity had 2 operational modes, and the second mode was terrifying. Elder Ketherick watched the press conference from his quarters. When it ended, he sent a message to the Korath home world. Update the protocols. Add the Vexery War to the restricted archives. Ensure future generations understand the lesson. Humanity is peaceful until you threaten their children. Then they become something else entirely. Something we must never provoke again. On Earth, Admiral Chun stood in the Nightfall Command Center, watching as his forces completed humanitarian operations in former Vexery space. Food distributions, medical aid, infrastructure repair. Humanity was helping the Vexery population survive, not because of mercy, but because elimination protocol only targeted the threat, not innocent civilians. Chun thought about the 83 people who died at Harmony Station, 17 children who would never grow up. He thought about the Vexery leaders who had laughed at human warnings. He felt no satisfaction in what had happened, only grim certainty that it had been necessary. "Admiral," Captain Torres said quietly, "all primary objectives are complete. The Vexery Consortium is eliminated as a threat. Orders?" Chun looked at the displays showing former Vexery space. "Begin transitioning systems back to civilian administration. Deactivate combat units and return to dormant status. We are switching back to standard operational mode." He paused. "Then update the protocols. Make sure every species in the galaxy understands clearly what happens when they push humanity too far. Make sure they know those 5 words and what they mean. Maybe next time, someone will remember before they make the same mistake." Torres nodded. "Yes, sir." "What message should we send to the galaxy?" Chun thought for a moment. "Tell them humanity is peaceful. Tell them we want cooperation and friendship. But also tell them we have very clear limits. And if someone crosses those limits, if they really push it, they will discover what we are capable of. They will learn why you should never, ever threaten a human's children." The command center began shutting down systems, returning to dormancy. Around the galaxy, human forces completed their missions and began withdrawing. Colony worlds returned to normal operations. Trade resumed. Humanity went back to being peaceful, helpful, and cooperative. But now everyone knew the truth. Everyone understood that humanity's peace was a choice, not a weakness. And everyone remembered what happened to the Vexery Consortium when they forgot that distinction. The protocols were updated. The histories were recorded in sealed archives. And the galaxy learned a lesson that would last for generations. Never threaten human civilians. Never attack their children. Never push them beyond the limits of patience. Because when a human says those 5 words, when they say, "Now you've really pushed it," it means something fundamental has changed. It means elimination mode has been activated. And nothing stops humanity once that happens. Nothing except the complete removal of the threat. The Vexery learned this lesson. The galaxy witnessed it. And for centuries afterward, when species had disputes with humanity, they remembered. They negotiated carefully. They respected boundaries. They never pushed too far, because they had seen what happened when someone did. And they had no desire to be the next species that learned why you should never, ever push a human too far. Asterisk.